left, right.
Listen, my friends, you are in for a treat tonight. Last episode, we talked about the year 1995 and what happened. If you like that episode, you're going to love this episode about 1999, which I promise you is an exciting year. Wait until we get to the music and the movies. The movies 1999, probably the best year I've lived through. But listen on, enjoy, and I will see you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, let's go.
Cheers.
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 All right, we are live. Welcome to Sip Talk, episode 199.9. My name is Justin DiGiulio, out of my basement in New Jersey, joined by James, the Bosnator Boswell, out of Charleston, South Carolina. The Bosnator is a philosopher, a professional bartender, a retired professional referee, and most exciting of all, an accountant. James, what's going on? You want to explain why we're laughing here?
I was laughing because I was thinking that we were running out of decimals, but then I was like, no, we'll never run out of decimals.
Yeah, except breaking the decade down to another another hundredth.
No, like we're gonna run out of the decade for sure. But in terms of decimals between 199 and 200, we can keep on going.
Well, the reason, yeah, 190 exactly. But the issue is 199, episode 199.9 today, because we're not prepared for an episode 200. We're talking about the year 1999. So we got some cool stuff in store for you. A lot happened in 1999. A lot of great movies, a lot of great kind of record headlines. So it's actually a pretty badass year. So I'm really excited to share the details of this year. So you got my notes in front of you, James. We got a long list of notes. We didn't actually think we'd have a full episode, but I think we're going to. We got Y2K, right? Because 1999 there was a lot of impending doom about the clock striking, the year 2000, the world collapsing. So we got a little bit on that. Can I just share? It's about a 30-second clip. Bill Clinton's State of the Union address.
Sure.
All right, good. Because I'm sharing
I have
it.
no idea what he said. I just remember like looking back on it, 1999 was a pretty good year.
Well, let me share this YouTube clip.
We should probably put some historical context of it. He was currently under impeachment for the Monica Lewinsky scandal.
All right, so let me throw this up here. Here we go. Let's make sure the audio is good.
Tonight I stand before you to report that America has created the longest peacetime economic expansion in our history. With nearly 18 million new jobs,
these are pretty cool.
Wages
stats.
rising at more than twice the rate of inflation, the highest home ownership in history, the smallest welfare rolls in 30 years, and the lowest peacetime unemployment since 1957. For the first time in 3 decades, the budget is balanced. From a deficit of $290 billion in 1992, we had a surplus of $70 billion last year.
America also displayed strength beyond.
All right. So
Is that not wild?
so when I listen to that video, I get really angry.
Why? Because George Bush kind of let that slip through his fingers there.
a whole bunch of reasons, but it really makes me think we really fucked up.
I mean, the thing is, just think, this is 1999, and the U.S. was actually doing phenomenal in 1999.
Unbelievable. Like, and I say that in like the exact definition of the word of like, I could not imagine us doing that well ever
But
again.
just think, you take
Like,
all
I
the
can't, I
metrics.
couldn't believe it. If you were to say we could get back to the way things were in 1999, I'd say I don't believe you.
Exactly. And I mean, you take all the metrics: unemployment, interest rates, inflation, home ownership,
Like wages beating inflation, homes
yeah,
being affordable.
yeah, homes being affordable, especially, and that just, I mean, given we had
Oh,
9/11
the government running a balanced budget.
running a balanced budget, yeah, but and the country making money, we had a surplus. You know, we've been running a deficit for so long, which we slipped very quickly back into. So it says a lot about what was happening in 1999. The world was actually in a good place. You know, a lot of people were pretty happy.
Well, the world was in a good place if you lived in the United States. There were plenty of places in
Okay,
the world that were
yeah,
not
fair
so
enough.
much.
Fair enough. So the United States was in a good place. We were in a good place. You and I were young teenagers,
8th grade.
and life seemed pretty good. Um, should we? Where should we start? I think we should maybe get back to Y2K.
I think we close out with Y2K. One, because that's at the very end of the year, and two, like, I don't know. It's kind of an oddball one.
Okay, so let's start with the storms. Okay, which, if you have the spreadsheet with our notes in front of you, because I want to make sure that we hit all these notes, because it's really surprising now, more than 2 decades ahead, to look back and realize that all of these things. Wait until we get to the fucking movies. 1999, arguably one of the best years for movies. Some of my favorite movies came out and premiered in 1999. So
Not just our favorites, but like movies that have
Well-
gone on to just like massive critical acclaim and influence.
So let's start with the weather incidents. Is that cool?
Sure,
Back
there's
on the
not
movie
too
was-
much really.
No, there's not. But Hurricane Floyd, which really demolished, I think, North Carolina.
Yeah, it
As
hit the
far as
Outer
the-
Banks.
Yeah, and it's a Category 4 storm, which is pretty high for a storm that's hitting North Carolina. Usually, the further north they go, they lose a lot of steam.
So it used to be that the Outer Banks had the highest incidence of like hurricane impacts in the country. I think weather patterns have shifted so that it's no longer the case, but for a while the Outer Banks was like kind of the nose of America that would consistently like get like stuck out just a little bit too far and knocked around by hurricanes.
Well, 87 people died in the storm, which is a pretty high death rate for the United States and a hurricane. So
Oh, so speaking of hurricanes, like one, we have no idea how many people died in Ian, but like Southwest Florida is a mess, and in about 24 hours, Charleston is going to be a mess.
yeah, so you have a hurricane hurling towards you in South Carolina. So we actually, this afternoon, we were trying to decide how the weather was going to get by you. I mean, is it raining where you are?
Yeah, a little bit. Like
Okay.
it's kind of spitting. Like we've got these outer bands. It's been like gusty and like windy since this time last night, but that's mostly just like leaves falling off of trees and crap.
Yeah.
I'm not expecting to see anything too bad happen until sometime tomorrow, but looking at it, it seems like it's going to be like a low cat 1 and there's a good chance that it could just like directly hit Charleston, which I'm all for.
Well, that's because you don't own any land that is below sea level. So
There's not much land that's below sea level in Charleston. There's lots of land that's at sea level.
yeah, well, sea level keeps rising, so that's changing. But Charleston is a very low laying terrain, and
If we get the right combination of factors, downtown can flood when the sun is shining.
yeah, I've been in downtown Charleston where there are several feet of water just in the streets. So you get hit by a hurricane, it could be pretty bad. And James does not live in the downtown area. He's just excited to have some cool weather, which rightfully so. I mean, it'll be bad for some people in that, with all due respect, it's bad for them, But
Well,
from your perspective, you're not going to go down and put sandbags around their house. You're just going to
no.
experience the
Like,
weather and
we've
rightfully
got the
so.
ice machine running. We've got beer. We've got food. We're ready. But I do feel like this is a put up or shut up moment for me because for the past 15 years, I've talked about how much I like hurricanes. And whenever I would say that to people, they're like, well, do you own a house or do you rent? And I
Well,
said, I rent. And they say,
now
of
you
course
are
you
an
do.
owner.
Like,
Yeah.
what? Like, why would you care? Your opinion will change once you own property. Now that I own property, nope, still love hurricanes.
We'll see when one of the trees falls on your car or something. We'll see. All right. So look. So not just the hurricane that knocked North Carolina. You got an F5 tornado that touched down in Oklahoma City and killed 36 people. An F5 tornado is a pretty serious tornado.
Yeah.
And it demolished Oklahoma City. Really.
And then, like
really
4 or 5 years ago, there was another tornado that did almost the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
the Moore tornado.
when you live in that kind of tornado alley, you're not a great place to live, especially if you own property.
All right, so this next one is crazy to think about.
Why? Because of how long ago it was, or because it was really the first one that was headline news?
Both. So the Columbine High School shooting happened in 1999 on April 20th. And I remember when that...
There were two shooters, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they killed 12 kids. There was 12 kids and one teacher, I think, in a high school.
Yeah. And I remember when that news came out, it was a massive shock to the country. Like we had really never seen anything like that before. And it was really traumatic for the country. And we had a trouble believing that something like that could happen here. And that was 23 years ago. And reading the line Columbine High School shooting, like that really, I think most people would agree that kind of is like the first major one or like the origin.
So we talked in the 1995 last episode that we recorded about the what was the bombing? Was it Oklahoma
City bombing was the origin
City.
Of domestic terrorism.
Yeah, and then 4 years later, you get a high school shooting.
Although for domestic terrorism, you could make an argument about the Unabomber.
Yeah.
But it still felt different in scale to the Oklahoma City bombing. But with this, I think most people would agree that like Columbine was like the first school shooting.
And now this stuff is happening on a pretty regular basis, which I think is what makes this particular instance so surprising. Just remembering how surprised we were and how we received that news. Like, how could that possibly happen?
So think about it. Like, if you hear a headline about a school shooting today, what is your response? What's your immediate gut level response?
It's actually very little. It's this shit's out of my control. There needs to be some type of regulation on guns. This shouldn't be happening, but it's really out of my control. And are
you shocked or surprised anymore?
Not at all. I don't spend that much time thinking about it. I mean, even people getting shot in the street, I'm like, well, I'm still got to go to work.
So yeah, that's my point is like, are you shocked and surprised by it? Because in 1999, everyone was. And today, it really just is like, that it's not even like A1 news. It might be like bottom page of A1, but it's not like A1 headline news anymore. Why? Because it's become so common. And like everything you said about like, it sucks and we need to do something about it. And like, why aren't we?
Well, there's a lot of reasons why we're not addressing
whenever
gun violence.
TheOnion.com has a headline that they run on their website whenever something like this happens, and it is No way to prevent this. Says only nation where this regularly occurs. And
that's
what
true.
they do is it's the exact same text every single time, like a long paragraph, and they run the exact same text and they just change like a number and a location, and they run the exact same thing. And after Uvalde back in May, the Onion's website, which normally has like dozens and dozens of articles on like random stuff, the Onion just published every single one of the "No Way to Prevent This" articles, and there were dozens, hundreds of them just posting the exact same article over and over and over again. And Rosh says we've become numb to it, and I think he's right. And it's fucking stupid.
It is wild. And the headline reads, just to repeat. Well, I'll let you repeat it.
No way to prevent this. Says only nation where this regularly occurs.
Yeah. So, and Columbine High School shooting was 1999, so 23 years ago, and we were shocked. The country actually came to a brief standstill.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a little wild. So look, let's get on to the next line here about the European Union. I didn't realize that this happened in 1999. I hadn't even thought about when it happened. I just thought it had existed for so long and just kind of more widely became adopted. But this is the euro, the currency, being established as the common currency between the European Union. There were 3 countries that opted out, and that was Sweden, the UK, and Denmark.
And the UK continued with their opt-out strategy later on.
Well, the
20 years later with Brexit.
Yeah, and now they are. Yeah, don't get me started with Brexit, man. But the UK is still using the pound, so that's interesting. Sweden is using the what, krona? Is that what it is?
I think
Sweden's
so.
still in the krona. I don't know about Denmark, but look, what I learned was that for the first 3 years, they didn't just get rid of all of their individual currencies. It was established as an invisible currency, so it was only really used in the back end and for accounting. But January 1, 2002, 12 countries had to basically change over all of their cash into euros.
And if you think about it, it was a pretty massive gamble for those countries to take. Placing faith in a union of countries that have not historically gotten along and saying, we have our own national currency. We collectively are going to trust each other to not screw each other over and use a common currency. And it worked out for the most part.
Yeah. As far as I know, it's going very smoothly. So,
yeah, there's been some hiccups along the way, but the EU started with, I guess, only, I don't know how many member nations, but the EU has expanded a lot in the last 23 years.
Yeah, so there's many more countries that are now on the euro. So,
which is a good thing, because I think despite all of its flaws, the idea of the European Union is a good one.
Well, look, yeah, but aside from just European Union, I think European Union is definitely a good one, especially when you're right next door to Russia. But having a common currency, I think, makes increasing sense, given that the majority of transactions are just done digitally. We're not actually exchanging. We're not actually exchanging fiat. We're not. Fiat is what?
Well, it's still fiat.
It's still fiat. Yeah, I was catching myself on that one. We're not actually exchanging cash money. So.
Well, and on a slight tangent, like as bad as things are economically in this country, I looked at a graph of how the US dollar is performed to like 20 other currencies across the world, including strong currencies like the pound and the euro.
Yeah.
And like the best currency was minus 5% versus the dollar. Like most of like the other ones were like minus 17 or 18%, with others being like 25 to 30+%. So as bad as things are for us, like it's really bad everywhere else too.
Well, how does the euro stand up to that? I'm just curious.
The euro is now worth less than $1.
Oh shit! All right.
When I lived in Spain, the euro was about $1.40. The last time I was in Spain, the euro was like $1.15.
Wow. Well,
Now it's like 98.
well, that's because the U.S. is quite the powerhouse in terms of consuming and
Well, it's also just our inflation woes are not as bad as other countries' inflation woes. Like that's not really something that, like, for example, Biden standing up there and talking about inflation, telling the American people, I know things aren't good for you guys right now, but just know that everybody else in the world is doing worse. Like, that's not a great message. So
yeah.
it's not getting headlines or anything. But you can read about individual countries talking about how terrible they're doing. But like the comparative sense is that we're doing better than other countries. But even like the Democrats aren't going to say that because it's not a powerful message to your voters, and it's not going to sway your opponents.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So back to the American news. So you mentioned going into I almost said 2019, going into 1999, that Bill Clinton was basically on trial, right?
I don't know if he was on trial when he gave the State of the Union address, but it was certainly like he was under investigation, and we should say hi to Lisa. Lisa, we're talking about 1999 tonight.
Yeah. So this is it's a fun year. So, but Bill Clinton was acquitted in 1999, and you know. I don't know how I feel about, because I suppose, especially since it's so far in the past, that I have very few feelings for Bill Clinton and what he was doing on the personal side of his life. But
I just know that the nation did well while he was president.
And that's where I was going to go with it, especially in retrospect. We can look back at things, and the country was doing pretty good. So, all right, so let's talk about some TV shows. There's some pretty cool TV shows. I'm probably missing some.
I'm sure you are, but like you're hitting some big ones.
SpongeBob.
Did you ever watch SpongeBob?
No, I think I was way too old at that point. I mean, it has, no, I don't even think I've ever watched it ever. So,
because I remember when it came out, for some reason, I kind of looked at it like a kid's show, and I've heard a lot of people explain to me that like there's actually like a whole bunch of adult messages in it, not like pornographic, just like more mature messaging and
well, they say
that you can take from it. But like I could just never get into it.
They say that about Disney movies as well. And it's directed towards children. The fact that they throw out some adult jokes is great, but you're at the end of the day, you're still watching a cartoon. And
I don't know, because
I know you watch cartoons. You just watch adult cartoons.
I was gonna say because Futurama came out in 1999.
Along with Family Guy.
Yeah, and Family Guy for as much as it has its critics, and deservedly so, like Family Guy really changed the way that humor on TV was done, because even though like in like critics will claim that like all their cutaway gags and everything and the way that they do their jokes is kind of derivative, like at the time it was novel. And one thing that Family Guy did that nobody had really done before was acknowledge that there's kind of like a formula and a script for how a TV show is supposed to run. And Family Guy just said, we're not going to do that. We're just going to do whatever we think is funny, and sometimes it'll work and sometimes it won't, but we're not going to listen to what we're supposed to do.
Well, and that's where Family Guy won, because it was unique and it was just funny. The jokes were funny.
Early Family Guy, yeah. And like it still has its moments.
Is The Simpsons still on? Simpsons
Yes.
Came out in 1989, I think. So,
yeah.
All right, and then here's a show I think we both liked, although I don't think I've watched very much of it, but Malcolm in the Middle.
Malcolm in the Middle was good. Notice how all of these shows don't have laugh tracks.
Yes, we talked about laugh tracks last episode. None of these TV shows have laugh tracks.
I
because
think actually more importantly, and you skipped over this, like
well,
The
I'll get back to it.
Sopranos. Did you ever watch The Sopranos?
I never really watched The Sopranos. The thing is, for me, I don't have the attention span to watch episode after episode after episode, and you have to sequentially watch episodes of shows like Sopranos and a lot of TV shows like that. For me, it's really tough to just go.
But think about what The Sopranos is another one of those kind of like first ofs.
Yeah, it was a gangster Italian mafia.
Well, it's not the first time that like anybody did something about the mob. But what was different about The Sopranos?
Good question. What was different about it? I don't know.
I
Well,
think
one, it was on
so.
HBO, so they could get away with a lot more.
Yeah, I think it was more like so before The Sopranos, like every episode on a show would kind of be its own self-contained thing, and like you'd have some problem, you'd have some resolution, but every episode can kind of stand on its own. Whereas The Sopranos kind of went with a more long form approach, where they had a really big story in mind, and they didn't have a problem leaving things unresolved from episode to episode. And I think the other thing that it really did that was different at the time was its main character, and also just kind of all the characters of focus were not necessarily good people. And
Well, I think
so you had kind of
making your protagonist a bad guy.
mhm.
I
Which
think
again, that's not the first time it was done, but they really leaned into it of having a morally ambiguous or sometimes morally reprehensible character as the show's focus, and not as the villain.
but it was a great show. How many seasons? Rosh can tell us that. How many seasons the Sopranos lasted? And then let's. So I didn't. I will throw this out there. It's not movie related, but Stanley Kubrick died in 1999. I didn't know that.
When
And
did Eyes Wide Shut come out that same year?
well, we'll get there in a minute, I think, won't we? Because we're gonna. I'm not sure. And then Stephen King, the writer, got hit by a bicycle, or I think I don't know, maybe not a bicycle. He got hit by a car when he was walking or bicycling down the side of the road, and ended up being in like a really critical condition, broke a whole bunch of bones. But he got hit by a freaking car. I never knew that.
Stephen King's confusing for me because like some of his stuff is fantastic.
Are you talking about the books? Or are you talking about the movies?
I'm talking about his books, but more specifically the ones that are turned into movies. Because I've read a few of his books, but I've probably seen more of his movies, like movies based on his books. And it's just like he's hit and miss. Where like when he's good, he's really good, and then other times he's like, "What in the hell? Someone paid you for this? Who gave you the treatment?"
But I mean, I suppose that's how writing goes. Rosh is saying it went for 6 seasons. Rosh, I'm also curious who wrote the movie Thinner. James, you ever seen the movie Thinner?
No.
About a fat guy who like makes a deal. He's a fat attorney. He makes a deal with somebody, and they put a curse on him. So he's just gonna. I think he runs somebody over, or his client runs somebody over, and they come out and put a curse on him that he's going to lose weight. And the guy basically turns into like a skeleton man with just skin hanging off him. He's eating as much as he can, can't put on any weight. And it's like a horror movie. It's a pretty cool movie, Thinner. Let's see. So some music. We got some cool music news. Ricky Martin's Living La Vida Loca came out.
I remember there was like a 2 or 3 year span where like anything Latino would get airplay.
Well, I mean, I think it gets a lot more airplay now, but Living La Vida Loca was kind of the first mainstream song that I can remember that had any Spanish lyrics in it. I didn't know what Living La Vida Loca even meant until probably a few years ago. So,
It's not a hard one, but
all right. And then, did you just throw this in here?
I
Eminem?
threw in this one because I think it bears mention.
So Eminem's was this his premiere album?
The Marshall Mathers LP, I believe it came out in '99, but I remember "Hi, My Name Is" came out when we were in like in 1999 when we were in 8th grade, and that song was so completely different from what rap music was before that like people just didn't really know what to do with it. And I recommend you go back and listen to "Hi, My Name Is" today. The song is still hilarious.
Great. So, I mean, I don't like the song. I don't think it's great music.
I don't think you have to like the song. Just like listen to it and like try and like look for the humor in it because it's there.
Look, I don't think it's great music, but I do think it's a great song. I don't know how that translates, but that's how I feel it.
I think the thing that he did that was different, that really caught people off guard, was so much of rap music before that was all kind of bravado, and his hit single was completely self-deprecating.
Well, that was how Eminem rapped. What he would do is he would self-deprecate and basically use up any material that somebody else could have come up with to diss him, and he'd just throw it out and make some self-deprecating jokes, and then when the mic was handed over, that they had nothing to say basically. And I don't know much about rap, especially back then, but it's my understanding of.
Yeah, Kay was asking if I've got supplies. If by supplies you mean alcohol and some canned food, then yes.
James is well prepared for the hurricane. So, speaking of hurricane, Woodstock 1999. So, the creators of the original Woodstock, they basically decided they sold this new Woodstock show to a mayor. It wasn't in the original location. It was on like an Air Force base, which was this huge place where people could camp out. They built this thing up. They hired local artists. It was a huge extravaganza, so many different stages. And it turned into, and we're talking big name acts. And this turned into a total shit show. It was very poorly managed. And I recently watched a documentary on it, and you understand actually how complex managing a concert venue with multiple shows is, where it is multiple days, and you have to have so many bathrooms, and not just bathrooms, but running water where people can wash their hands. You have to have food available and water available.
So the logistics that go into throwing a music festival are really intense.
But it's they kind of set themselves up for failure. They hired these vendors, third-party vendors. The third-party vendors were setting their own prices. So back in 1999, where people weren't even willing to pay $1 for bottled water, right?
They're charging like $4.
I think they were charging like $5 to $8 for a bottle of water, which in some cases,
if you went to like a pharmacy at the time, you could have gotten for probably like 45 cents.
But yeah, people might have gone to this concert with $20 to $25 in their pocket for the weekend back in 1999. And you're saying, a bottle of water costs $5. You're going to be there for 3 days.
So it wasn't just the cost, but it was the message that came with the cost, which is the first Woodstock in 1969 was all about like free love and just kind of, and it was
anti-capitalism.
Yes, very much so. And so the people that went to Woodstock 99 got really pissed because it was capitalism embodied. And they're just like, you completely co-opted the message of the original Woodstock to make a whole bunch of money, which is really postmodern. But
but look, also these people are baking under the sun. Nothing's free.
Wait, didn't it like rain at one point and like turn into like a total shit show?
So it did rain at a certain point, and it ended up with people kind of body surfing across the mud, not like crowd surfing, but like just body surfing across the mud. But because people were just like knocking over the porta potties, people were literally just body surfing through shit. Everybody smelled bad. There was no real running water for showers, and it gets pretty bad. So at the kind of and the thing is, like, you have these acts where the people got so revved up because this is Woodstock. People are going for not just the music, but the experience. And when you have acts that are, think of music
Well,
in 1999, like you got
Woodstock
this,
'99 had a huge set list in terms of like all the biggest bands went to it.
well, that's Woodstock, exactly. The biggest bands were there. But just think of what music was like in 1969 versus 1999. You get this kind of grunge, but almost harder edge grunge. You have a couple of more kind of acoustically inclined bands.
Yeah, but you also have like this new edge, like this new metal kind of like pop metal element too.
Well, and that's where it gets bad. You got Fred Durst from Limp Bizkit, and this is the guy that really revs it up. And in his playlist, he's got, I think one of his songs might be like "Tear It Down" or something like
Break
that.
stuff.
Break stuff. And the crowd at this point this is late at night. He goes on at like 9, 10 o'clock at night, and people are just destroying everything around them. Anything that was built, the fences, different shacks. And then the Red Hot Chili Peppers, I think it was the same night, came on. Red Hot Chili Peppers, great band, wild, insane to watch. I think, have we been to a Red Hot Chili Peppers?
No, I've never been a huge fan of them. That's not to say they're bad. They're just not something that appeals to me.
I'm not a huge fan, but they have good music. And one of their songs is called Fire, and it literally ended with nearly everything that was flammable anywhere around the stage being lit on fire.
So Lisa says that sounds like a terrible time, and I completely agree. And that's why they set the thing on fire. It's just like, we've been misled. This sucks, and now we're going to take out our frustrations on you.
Well, people felt like they were almost being held hostage. Like it was not the conditions were borderline unbearable. And and just bear in mind, this is Woodstock, so you have naked people walking around, and then with some of the music, I think that with the first night they had a warehouse, because remember it took place on a what did I say?
Old Air Force base.
An old Air Force base. So they had converted one of the hangars into a rave, right? And you have just massive drug use. You have naked people all over the place, and not just here in that venue, but also for some of the shows, you had massive mosh pits where people were just getting fucking skulls cracked, fucking elbows to the nose, crazy shit going on. So it ended up, Woodstock 1999 ended up in a total shit show. If you've got 2.5 to 3 hours to spend watching Netflix, there's an awesome Woodstock 99 documentary. It's almost like Fire Festival, which maybe we'll cover that in a subsequent episode. But
I feel less bad about Fire Festival because at least that was like rich people being duped. Like,
yeah, but this wasn't. This was not rich people. This was just young people. And all right, so you got Woodstock 99, and then you have Coachella. It's the first year for Coachella. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, and apparently that one went well enough that they decided to keep on doing it. So
yeah, it definitely went well. Couple of headline news. You got Elian Gonzalez, and he was found 3 miles off the shore of Fort Lauderdale.
That saga went on for a while.
Yeah, well, apparently, they took him into U.S. custody, and
Cuba wanted him back.
Cuba and his father wanted him back in Cuba, but he was basically a Cuban refugee who escaped with whoever, and the majority.
And the kid was like 6 years old.
The majority of the people who he escaped with on whatever boat or raft or whatever it was drowned. There was a storm that came through, and most of them drowned. So he was one of 3 that survived, hung on to a life raft, and then a couple of fishermen found him outside of Fort Lauderdale, which was lucky, for real. And just totally wild, I think.
I still feel like the resolution of that, where like the U.S. family that was holding him, they eventually got like raided by a SWAT team. And there's this picture of a guy in full SWAT gear with an MP5, and like there's this little kid on the other side of the frame, and it's just this wild photo.
Yeah, why are you raiding these people with a SWAT team for a kid? What was the?
Well, it was basically like the court said like he needs to go back to Cuba, and the U.S. family said we're not going to do that, and that's why the SWAT team went in. Was like, we're enforcing this court order of like he needs to be deported because that's what the courts have said. So the family basically just said like tried to call the government's bluff, and in most cases that's not a good idea.
Well, it ends up with the SWAT team raiding your house.
But it's just like you've got like this woman holding this young kid, and like this guy with an MP5.
Yeah, wild. So a couple more headline news. Ford acquires Volvo. I didn't know that happened in 1999. I know my mom was a huge Volvo fan and never bought a Volvo.
Thus commencing the decline of the brand.
She bought a 1998 Volvo and then never bought a Volvo after that.
Well, good move on her part.
And then you got Harry Potter, the Prisoner of Azkaban, which I've never read. Harry Potter
was that wasn't the first, like the first Harry Potter book was before 1999? I
don't know.
Let's get the research department on that one.
Yeah, Rosh, when was the first Harry Potter book, and was it The Prisoner of Azkaban? I thought this was the first Harry Potter book, which was then turned into a movie 3 or 4 years later. I thought the first Harry Potter book came out in 1999.
All right, let's keep on moving because we got movies to talk about.
I can't wait to get to the movies. Serbia ramps up ethnic cleansing against Kosovo Albanians. So.
Yeah, and we bombed a whole crap load of like Eastern Europeans. And Rosh says 1997 was the first Harry Potter book.
Okay, well, all right.
Yeah,
if you're a huge Harry Potter fan.
Let's keep on going through these because like. Some of the we could talk about all of these for a good bit.
Well, look, we got time to talk about the movies. There's not all right. So the world population
6 billion. We're almost at 8 now.
Yeah, and then Lance Armstrong wins his first Tour de France.
Surely nothing but a bright future for him.
Well, he had the odds were stacked for him. So actually, they weren't because I think pretty much everybody in cycling at that time was using performance.
I don't remember which year it was, but I think somebody went back through and looked at like that year's finishing records for the Tour de France and said, if we cross off every single cyclist that was later found out to be doping in some way, the person who would have won the Tour de France was like 43rd.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't hate Lance Armstrong actually. Because he was doing the same thing as everybody else, and he was just a better cyclist.
Well, the problem with Lance, I don't think, is that he was doping. The
problem was that he lied.
He lied about it, and also like he bullied the people that were trying to keep the sport clean. So if you were riding during the time that Lance was riding, if you tried to blow the whistle on anybody, Lance, knowing that he was the biggest name in cycling by far, would be riding right next to you on the next day, giving you shit the entire ride. Because it was a collective group saying, we are going to squash anybody that tries to rain on our EPO laden parade.
All right, next in sports news, the U.S. women's team won the World Cup. And I think that was won by a what do you call in soccer where it's like a final kick?
It was a kicks from the mark, and the iconic image from that one, I think it was Brandi Chastain made the winning penalty kick, and she tore off her shirt in celebration. There's a picture of her in her sports bra with like her arms up in the air, and that was like the sports picture of the year.
Next in news, Jesse the Body Ventura, Worldwide Wrestling's People's Champ, was sworn in as the governor of Minnesota,
starting a problematic trend in American politics. I'm not necessarily saying that he was bad, but I'm saying the trend he started was bad.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you had Reagan, right? So
never mind Reagan. Yeah, you're right.
I mean, it's not. He didn't start it. And I don't know anything about what happened in Minnesota. I know he couldn't have done a terrible job, but it's Minnesota, so even if he did a terrible job, it was just second.
Yeah, who's going to know?
Yeah. And then this is pretty tragic news, and I was not a huge wrestling. In the early '90s, I loved WWF, but one of the biggest names in WWF was Bret the Hitman Hart, and he had a brother who was also one of the headliners, not as big, but Owen Hart. And what happened, I think it wasn't WrestleMania, but it was like Monday Night Raw. It was a very big televised event. Owen Hart was being lowered into the ring from the rafters above, and his line became untethered, and he just kind of let go of the rafters to be dropped in, and just fell directly from the top of the arena into the center of the wrestling ring. And I think he died kind of minutes later. And a lot of people actually just thought that it was part of the act. They thought it was part of the WWF act. This guy pretends to fall, but I don't know how they would think somebody could pull that off. How do you pretend to fall 30 feet by falling 30 feet?
I'm pretty sure they probably would have thought that it was like a dummy or something.
Maybe.
But yeah, like it's pretty tough to survive an 80-foot fall into anything but water.
Yeah, no, it was wild. And then we got Michael Jordan and Michael Johnson. I had forgotten about Michael Johnson until I read this, but he was a 400-meter runner. He was 31 years old, which at the time was pretty old for runners. And he did a 400-meter, which for those of you who don't know is one lap around the track at 41.81 seconds, which is
that's crazy fast.
If you guys don't know how fast that is, and you want to figure it out, go to the track.
I'll tell you right now, if I were to try and run a 400, I'd be happy if I ran a 70.
That 70's not bad, man. I'd be happy with an 80. So,
I actually think like an 80 is probably more realistic for me.
Yeah, I've been doing some lately, and I'm clocking about 90 seconds at a good pace now. I plan to run. I usually do that after running a few miles.
But what I would say is, like,
after that,
I tell you, you've got one thing to do today, which is run a 400 as fast as you can. What time do you think you'd clock?
I could probably do maybe a minute 15.
Yeah, I'd expect to be somewhere between 75 and 80.
Yeah, but a minute 15 would be like, it would have to be a spectacular day.
Right, no, it's like it's a full send. I'm going to do like a little warm up, limber up, and this is all I'm doing today.
It's not just mental, because the thing is, for 100 meters, we're talking about running, so maybe we're boring you, but the thing about running is you got your sprinters, so 100 meters. You got your milers, right, which you run a mile way differently, just your form and how hard you're going. You run a mile differently than you do a 100-meter sprint. And then when you get to your 5-mile races, your 10-mile, your
the
5K,
form changes considerably
the
farther you go.
The thing is, the further the distance, you can't go all out, because you have to be reserved. You have to reserve for later on. The 100 meters, you can go all out. The thing about the 400 is that you can't. You have to. It's like you can't be going all out. Right, but
so that's the nice thing about the 100 is that like there's not much like mental endurance required. Of like, you're not gonna, like, by the time any like fatigue or pain sets in, the race is over.
Well, let me ask you a question: 100-meter dash, how long is it? 10 seconds. Hold your
world
breath.
record's like 9.8.
Hold your well. For the common person listening, 10 seconds, okay?
I wouldn't be. I'd be happy with 15 right now.
Hold your breath for 10 seconds. That's nothing. Now hold your breath for 10 seconds and sprint in place. That's nothing, right? You don't need as much air and energy in your body, but when you do a 400, which is 4 times as long, your body consumes that much more oxygen. So it's a wild race, the 400, and kudos to Michael Johnson.
By the time you make it to like probably about 200 to 250 meters, that's where your body starts to say, okay, what are we doing here?
Exactly, yeah. So next sports news, Michael Jordan retires for the second time. I thought I'd throw that in there because it was We talked about Michael Jordan in the 1995 episode last
Napster.
episode. So in more exciting news, Napster is released in 1999, which closed less than 2 years later in 2001. But Napster
It opened the door to a complete revolution.
Let me ask you a question. You think if Napster didn't exist, we would have things like iTunes, and where do you get your music from?
I used to I used to use Napster or LimeWire. Then I moved on to BitTorrent, and I would just download entire discographies.
Yeah.
These days,
Where do you get your legit music from? I should say.
these days I actually listen to most of my music on either Pandora or YouTube.
Okay, but there was about 2 decades that you
I downloaded all my music
download all your
illicitly.
music. Yeah.
With probably 99.9% of my music was downloaded illegally. I would buy a CD every once in a while, but that was the extreme minority.
But that's before music streaming, which we have now.
Yeah.
But back then, when you were downloading illegally, there was really no other way to get your music legally. You couldn't hear a song.
It's either
or
spend
album,
$15 for a CD for maybe 2 songs that you like,
but you'd have to go to the record store. You have to go to the music store.
Oh yeah,
buy the CD.
Of course.
Yeah. So with Napster, you could just hear. And Napster, one of the things that people don't understand about Napster is how fucking fast it was compared to LimeWire or any torrent. Napster, you could download a song, which at the time was like 2.5 megabytes. You could download it in 30 seconds.
Well, depends on what your connection was, because I remember the first song I downloaded on Napster took like 25 minutes.
Well, fast forward 5 years, it still took you 25 minutes to download the same song. It's just you had that much other traffic you were competing
with. But I think, and I could do an entire episode talking about piracy, but if it weren't for Napster and other forms of being able to pirate music or listen to music for free, I probably wouldn't have discovered 1/10 of the bands that I listen to now. And practically every band that I've gone to see live, which is how most bands make their money, I wouldn't have heard of that band, let alone pay for a ticket to go see them live if I hadn't pirated their music.
What band?
Practically any band that I go to. Recently, L1011 and Metric.
All right. All right. We're almost to movies. We got 2 things. We got West Nile virus.
Yeah, I remember that was a big deal.
Which is and that was pre-coronavirus, obviously.
But it wasn't a big deal when you look back on it.
Yeah, but if it happened this year, we would be treating it the same. The way the media treated West Nile virus then is not the way they would be treating it now. It would be impending, just like monkeypox. Monkeypox and West Nile virus, pretty similar.
Not in their symptoms, but
no, I mean not actually at all similar. But how much effect they're going to have on people is effectively similar. And then last, before we get to movies, which I know we're both excited for, is Mitch Hedberg. I heard he wrote a book, and he brought it to the publisher, and the publisher said, "You need to rewrite this." And he said, "No, I think I'll just make a copy."
It's a
poorly delivered.
Mitch Hedberg joke.
Poorly delivered, but Mitch Hedberg, great humor. And very dry humor. Mitch Hedberg, great comedian. I actually might. I'm going to play some Mitch Hedberg after we wrap this up.
Not Mitch Hedberg, but one of my favorite jokes, and this is in the style of Mitch Hedberg, is a guy says, "Broke up with my girlfriend." And she gave me the reason. She says, "I just feel like you don't understand me." I said, "What do you mean?"
Good one. That wasn't his?
No, but it's in his style.
So let's get to movies, dude, because so we're talking about 1999. The movies that came out in 1999, we're going to skip a few of these, I think.
We're going to skip a bunch of these.
But let's talk about some of these that we talk about today. So number one, I know it's one of my favorite movies. I'm pretty sure it's one of your favorite movies. It's a Kevin Spacey movie.
Back before that was a problem.
I don't have any problem with Kevin Spacey.
Yeah, but a lot of people do.
Yeah, I know. Because they want to have a problem with somebody. But American Beauty, which if you have not seen American Beauty, you must see American Beauty. next movie on the list, The Green Mile, which is a great movie. If you haven't seen it, you probably don't need to see it.
No, you should see American Beauty though. That
But,
movie is
yeah,
wild.
it is.
It
is
really
a cool
takes you on a journey.
movie. I actually put it on the other night and fell asleep. I think I had a couple of drinks and just didn't want to close my eyes, so I sat down on the sofa and put it on, and 4 minutes into it, I fell asleep. And then number 3, 1999, and I think we both kind of thought of this movie when we thought of 1999.
It's not the one I think of in 1999, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. Was The Matrix. Awesome movie. Unfortunately, Matrix had a series of I don't know what you would call them, sequels that were just not good.
Yeah, but the original Matrix, I think when people watch the original Matrix for the very first time, like it was hard to walk away from that movie not blown away by
Well, it
the
makes you
concept and the execution.
It makes you question your actual reality.
But even if you don't think about the plot, you just look at like the way that the movie was shot and the action sequences and what they did with that movie was just beyond what anything else was doing at the time.
Awesome movie. I maybe I'll watch that this weekend. We'll see. Then you got The Sixth Sense, Bruce Willis movie, and whatever that little kid's name was, who's now bigger and older and chubbier. Yeah, very strange looking.
Yeah.
Hale Joel Osment or Joel Haley Osment or something.
I don't know, but that's an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
That was probably his best movie because
it was
weird. Okay, what do you want to hit next?
I'm going to skip a whole bunch actually.
Well, you got Sleepy Hollow. Sleepy Hollow was a cool movie.
I was going to say
number 12, dude. Number 12.
But no,
unless you got one before number 12. Let's just
John Malkovich didn't really do much for me, but I know you love that movie.
Oh my God. Being John Malkovich is John Cusack played the main character. Cameron Diaz played his girlfriend, and John Malkovich played John Malkovich. If you guys haven't seen
multiple times,
if you guys have not seen the movie Being John Malkovich, it is you just have to see it. It is the most
I wasn't a huge fan of it, but at the same time, like it had a really cool concept and it did something different.
Let me ask you a question. When was the last time you saw it?
20 years ago.
Okay, dude, you gotta watch it again. It is the most fucked up movie ever. It's so weird, and it is so cool. All right.
The Blair Witch Project. Terrible movie, but incredible legacy.
Incredible. The reason it has the legacy is, I think, possibly because the movie was a letdown, but the marketing campaign. This is a movie shot by some kids, potentially based off a true story, which doesn't mean shit. For those of you kids who are listening to us, I want to define what based off a true story means. It means we have an idea and a whole story based off something else that happened. This isn't anything about what happened, but something happened. We got some ideas. We ran with our ideas, not what happened. So, but it was shot on a camcorder, and these kids went in the woods, and supposedly there were some witches, and they put the sticks together in a certain way, and that meant people were going to die.
It was just really like it was disorienting. A lot of time, nothing's happening in the movie.
And also, they would like drop the video camera, so you would just hear shit happening in the background, which is a cool horror movie concept because a lot, especially the classic horror movies, you don't see the gore, you don't see the killing; it's just implied.
Yeah, which is sometimes has more of an effect, anyways.
But yeah, exactly. But they went and they took it in a different way, to kind of a different degree, and it just didn't deliver with this movie. But it had such.
But it still got people into the theaters.
It's such build up, yeah, and
for a movie that had to have had a production budget of $300.
Yeah, we're gonna need a couple of Sony 8 tapes, and we'll go from there. All right, so Blair Witch Project. Are you gonna hit 14, 15, 16?
I'm skipping over all of those.
So you got Stigmata, which was actually a pretty cool movie. I think that was a scary movie. Magnolia, which is a Tom Cruise movie about the kind of the dark side of like dating coaches and male dating coaches, really. You got The Faculty, which was another horror movie about the faculty of a high school being aliens. I think basically.
Yeah,
Um,
I really feel like we can skip a whole bunch until we get to
23. All right, so hit me with 23.
Fight Club.
Mm.
I don't
I don't.
think you can understate the impact that movie had. Not at the time, but like I don't know why that movie still speaks to me. But there is so much that going on in that movie, and watching it once, you're just not going to pick it all up.
Well, and that's the thing about having a great director and a great writer and a great cinematographer is that they're able to put the pieces together so well that there are so many layers to the movie, the message of the movie, the message behind the message, and then how the message is delivered. Right? Like it, and it's a cool movie. It's just it's kind of about taking down the man and taking down popular
The movie has so much to say about living in a capitalist society and what it's like to be a man in today's society, and how do you express frustration?
through punching people.
Yeah.
If if and I know girls don't like this movie. I know this because every girl I've ever dated was just like, oh, I'm not interested. Or my ex boyfriend used to make me watch that on repeat. And I'm just like, all right, cool.
Did you date somebody I dated?
No, literally every girl has always said that. But we just lost our Instagram feed.
Well, yeah, because we're after an hour, but we got some more movies to hit, and yeah. So Fight Club, I don't know. For me, that's still my number one.
But yeah, but the point is that it's a good movie, and people who haven't seen it, and that also includes you ladies, you got to see it. It's an all-time classic movie,
And it's not about fighting. It really isn't.
It's not. It's not. That's not. Yeah, it's just not. You're right. It's just not about fighting. They are fighting in the movie, but the majority of the scenes are not actually. So,
but even like the fighting is a placeholder for something else. I'm not going to say what it is. Watch the movie.
All right. So the next, which I'm guessing a movie you haven't even ever seen, is Girl Interrupted, which is about it's a Angelina Jolie and Winona Ryder star in this movie. And Winona Ryder plays this girl who basically her family thought she tried to commit suicide, and they put her in a mental institution. And Winona Ryder's character wasn't really that crazy. She said she didn't really try to commit suicide. She was not mental, but she goes to this mental institution and sees what real crazy is, but then gets stuck there for several years, and that's why it's called Girl Interrupted, because it's about this high school age girl who spends her high school years basically in this mental institution as a relatively sane person witnessing insane people.
So that makes me
realizing that she is sane because she realizes how the insane people are actually insane.
It makes me think of an experiment that a couple psychologists ran a long time ago, and I'm probably getting some details wrong, but basically I think it was like 3 or 4 psychologists got themselves admitted to a psychiatric hospital by like fake presenting symptoms.
Yeah.
And like then after a short period of time, like said, all right, we're just going to act normal. How hard will it be for us to get out?
Yeah, that is quite the social experiment, and I'm assuming it took them they were basically unable to exit.
Yeah, they had a really hard time. I think for one of them, like it actually required like a third party to be like, "Look, this is what happened. Like, you guys need to let this person out."
And I'm sure that took months of just bureaucracy to go
through.
But so that's the bad side of the mental institutions. What I say all the time is you have these crazy people on the street who are talking to themselves, pushing people in the subway, doing drugs. There needs to be a medium place somewhere between jail and the side of West 38th Street, right?
Yeah.
And I think mental institution is a good place for that, but we need to really revisit what's going on with that. I'd love to found a new mental institution And just there's all these derelict buildings that are high-rise buildings that just the construction wasn't completed or whatever.
Well,
I'd love to just press people to. I actually almost called you the other day on my drive home. I passed a bunch of buildings that were the construction halted, and I wanted to be like, yo, can we maybe look? Maybe we'll have a conversation about it, but look into fundraising, because I guarantee, especially in the New York City area, there are so many people with so much money that would be totally behind the idea of building an institution to deal with these people who are not happy on the streets. We know they're not happy on the streets. They're people with mental disorders and drug abuse problems. And they don't want to be on the street, and people don't want them on the street, except the extreme liberals, which 8 years ago were saying we need to put them in homes. And now we're saying, well, we can't put them in homes because, the street is public space and this is their property and this is what they want to be doing.
I mean, are we going to do SipTalk Conquers Homelessness episode 3 or something like that? Because
maybe, but look, the issue is that drug addiction and drug abuse, but addiction leads to death. So whatever we're doing now is just enabling these people to kill themselves, and it's really unfortunate. Let's
keep on. Let's speed run through the rest of these.
Toy Story number 2.
Toy Story 2 was okay.
I don't even know if I ever saw it.
I didn't. American Pie. We need to talk about that one because that movie had a massive impact.
1999, American Pie is released, and what a movie, man! What a movie! High school movie. I don't even know what to say about it, but what do you have? She's All That.
That was probably 98.
Yeah, no, it might have been a little earlier, but you had a few of these. You had a few of these late 90s movies that were about high schoolers.
But they were formulaic.
Yeah, but that's kind of where I'm going. Prior to that, you had Animal House.
Animal House was not terribly formulaic.
No, yeah, it was for the time 25 years prior.
Yeah, but I'm thinking about She's All That followed the very traditional romantic comedy thing of two people that are mismatched, and somehow it turns out that one of them teaches the other one about things that they wouldn't have learned otherwise, and it turns out that they were matched, and now they're together and it's a happy ending. American Pie just said we're not really going to care too much about the message. We're just going to tell a story that felt much more real.
Yeah, I would say it definitely felt more real. All right, what's next on here?
The Mummy, mostly because Brendan Fraser's been in the news a lot recently.
Why has he been in the news? Because he's very fat now?
Well, it's for a long time the internet was kind of making a campaign to bring Brendan Fraser back into acting. Now, I don't know all of the story, but apparently, he had a really terrible divorce where he just got raked over the coals in the divorce, and he also had an injury that he had an injury to his back that made it hard for him to be physically active, so his physique changed. And I think the collective view of the internet was, this is a good guy. Oh, and he also spoke out about sexual harassment in Hollywood. Some Hollywood producer sexually harassed him. He spoke out about it and basically got blacklisted from Hollywood entirely.
Mm.
And so the internet kind of just looked and said, this is a good guy that made movies that we really liked. And then he just kind of got exiled from Hollywood entirely. And we don't think it was fair, and we want him back. And so, he recently is he made a movie that got good reception, and it just seems like he's been universally welcomed back, and people have appreciated him, and I think he really appreciates feeling like people really do love him.
And they do, but I'll tell you, I saw him in a movie that came out in the last year or so, and he looked to be about 280 pounds.
I think it's just about the internet felt here's a person who was done wrong, that did things that made movies that we liked, and we want him back. And so it's a triumph of kind of popular sentiment bringing someone back that they liked.
Fair enough. Karen on TikTok says Breakfast Club, and that was kind of a high school movie, but way prior. I just wanted to give her
Breakfast
a little
Club was
shout-out.
good,
But look, the thing about
that was a John Hughes movie.
But what I'm saying about Brendan Fraser, though, and I'm happy he's back, and I wish him the best in his career, et cetera, et cetera. I think he's a great actor. I don't know if he's a great actor, but he's a good actor. There was a post about him on Instagram along with a bunch of other actors, and I read through, I don't know, 8 or 9 comments, and there was like hashtag Brendan Fraser under, like, here's some great actors from the last decade or so, and then there was a hashtag Brendan Fraser, and then the rest of the guys, and all the comments were, well, why didn't you put a picture of Brendan Fraser? When in actuality there was a picture of Brendan Fraser. He was just 280 pounds. So
yeah, he looks very different today than he did like in The Mummy, because in The Mummy he's just cut.
It's 23 years later. All right, so you have Mummy. Then you got you skip Man on the Moon, which was actually a pretty cool movie.
I skip movies that I hadn't seen. The last movie that I wanted to talk about actually was The Phantom Menace, which that was the first Star Wars movie in like 20 years, and I remember the marketing and the build up before that movie came out was insane.
Star Wars Episode 1.
Yep.
Number 1 of the prequel. Yeah.
Yep.
I didn't watch it. I didn't watch any Star
Yes,
Wars.
you did.
No, I don't think I did. Maybe I don't even remember it.
It's the one with Jar Jar Binks in it.
I don't know who that is.
All right. I'm reasonably sure that you watched it, and the thing about it was there was so much hype before the movie, and the problem with Episode 1 compared to the original 3 from the late 70s and early 80s is that in Episode 1 and the rest of the prequels, George Lucas had complete creative control, and George Lucas, in terms of like world building and visionary ideas, very good. When it comes to script writing and editing, very bad. Because his wife is the one who did most of the editing for the original Star Wars movies. And his wife could stand up to him and say, George, that's a bad idea. This is going to work out better. And that's why the first 3 are so good, is because they were edited by somebody who could tell George Lucas no.
I don't think I've ever seen it. I know I haven't seen any of the original Star Wars, and I have no recollection of seeing this. I remember there was one guy that had a double lightsaber, but I think
that was the first one. That was Darth Maul.
I think I only bought the toys, and I didn't.
Anyways, Episode 1 wasn't terrible. I'm not saying it was a bad movie, but it was one where it had been hyped up so much, and people had probably unrealistic expectations for it based on how good the original 3 Star Wars were, that there was nothing it could have done to meet those expectations. But at the same time, it was the first movie of many where George Lucas was in charge of writing the script, and there are some just terrible lines in those 3 movies because nobody could tell George Lucas no at that point.
All right, so I want to give a quick shout out to a couple of other movies. We skipped one that was Big Daddy, which
Adam Sandler.
We gave a little shout out to Adam Sandler last episode. This was actually a funny movie, but it was not a good movie. And then you got Drew Barrymore, Never Been Kissed, terrible movie. Bowfinger, which I remember thinking was hilarious, definitely not that hilarious. Thomas Crown Affair, the remake. You had Steve McQueen, the first one, and then you have Pierce Brosnan, the second one. In my opinion, great movie. And then we end with Notting Hill, which was, Julia Roberts, Notting Hill. That's it. You have anything else? 1999?
I was going to talk about video games.
All right,
real quick. I'm just going to say
real quick. Let's hit
Super
some video
Smash
games
Brothers.
real quick. That was 1999.
It was,
dude. I think both. We used to just put the computers to play each other and watch.
I was obsessed with that game.
Yeah, it was a great game. We had it in my office a few years ago, and they used to stay in the office to fucking 11, 12 o'clock at night playing each other in Super Smash Brothers as a bunch of 20 and 30-year-old kids just drinking and smoking the hookah in the office at freaking 11 o'clock at night. I just thought it was the silliest thing ever. But but 20 years later, it was still a very popular video game.
Yeah, well, I'm looking through the original Tony Hawk, Unreal Tournament, Super Smash Brothers, Age of Empires 2. Like, none of these are going to matter to you, but like,
Yeah, I'm not a big video, but Unreal Tournament I played, and I played a handful of the others.
EverQuest, the very first MMO.
I don't know what MMO is. I don't know what EverQuest is.
Massively multiplayer online. So think of like World of Warcraft. EverQuest was what like the one that did that first. Roller Coaster Tycoon.
All right, well, you're lost.
Dance Revolution.
All right. So on that note, that covers 1999. We're gonna fizzle out on some lousy video games that just cause.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna play our rap music. Are you cool with that?
What are we listening to? Hi, my name is.
No, I don't think we're not. We don't have a license to do that, so we just got to listen to our free music, and we're out of here. So thank you guys for joining us, and come back next time. Adios.
I'll be up playing in a hurricane tomorrow.
Have fun, man. Let me know how it goes. Keep me updated. I'm really curious about this. I'll
Later.
see you later. Adios.
All right, you've made it to the other end of the episode. I want to thank you for making it this far. If you like this episode and you want to thank me, you want to thank James, you want to thank the rest of us here at SipTalk, please subscribe to the channel on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, or any audio podcast platform. And we will see you next time, or you will see us next time if you subscribe. Well, you'll hear us next time if you subscribe, but if you go to YouTube, you'll see us too. Either way, until next time, adios.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.